Good afternoon and welcome, fellow councillors, officers and members of the public to South Kesteven District Council Planning Committee on Thursday the 24th of February 2022. I'm not aware of a fire drill taking place this afternoon, so if the fire alarm does sound then please vacate the building via the stairs. Please can everyone ensure that their mobile phones are turned off or to silent, thank you. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed via YouTube, so could you ensure that your microphones are turned off when not speaking? We want them on when you're speaking, but not on when you're not. I am Councillor Helen Crawford, the chairman of this committee, and I'll be chairing today. With me I have Vice Chairman Councillor David Bellamy. We also have with us Assistant Director of Planning Emma Whitaker, Principal Planning Officer Phil Jordan, Senior Planning Officer Ellie Seiler, Senior Planning Officer Adam Murray, Legal Services is with Will Thomas, and Democratic Service is Alice Atkins today. Public speakers, please be aware that you have 3 minutes to speak. You'll be advised when you have 30 seconds left. You may finish your sentence, but not another paragraph. And we will go to Councillor Bellamy now for the list of public speakers, please.
Agenda item 5, S21/1045. Speakers, Ward Councillor Ian Stokes, applicant's agent speaking for Gareth Johnson. Agenda item 7, S21/2193, speaking for applicant's agent, Connor Shingler.
Lovely, thank you very much. And we will now go to the agenda. Apologies for absence, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Mrs Judy Smith, Councillor Robert Reid, Councillor Rosemary Capey-Brown, Councillor Charmaine Morgan, Councillor Penny Milnes and Councillor Phil Dilks. We have Councillor Sarah Trotter acting as a substitute for this meeting only. Thank you.
Thank you. We might have Councillor Dilks joining us a bit later, and Councillor Cathy Rice Oxley has made me aware that she might be slightly late. So thank you. We will go to, could we do the attendance, please? Thank you. Attendance.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
Present.
Councillor David Bellamy.
Present.
Councillor Harish Bisnelson.
Present.
Councillor Judy Stevens.
Present.
Councillor Penny Robbins.
Present.
Councillor Ian Selby.
Present.
Councillor Jackie Smith. And Councillor Sarah Trotter.
Present.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, disclosures of interest. Do I have any? And if you think of any later on, then please make us aware. Thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of January 2022. Is everybody happy? And if they are, can I have a proposer? Councillor Harish Bisnelson.
I propose, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Selby. All those in favour? 6. Abstentions, 1. Thank you. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of January 2022. Can I have a proposer if everybody's happy? Thank you, Councillor Selby. Yeah, seconded by Councillor Bisnelson. All those in favour, please. Thank you. And abstentions? Thank you. Right, we will go to agenda item 5 on the application, and we have Ellie Seiler doing the presentation, please. When you're ready, thank you. Sorry. Yes, certainly.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
My name is Ellie Siller. I'm one of the senior planning officers of the council. This is application reference S211045, and it's a residential development of 30 dwellings at Station Approach in Ancaster. So first of all, we've got an aerial view of the site taken from Google Maps. You can see it indicated in red there. This is a wider context, so you can see it's to the north part of Ancaster. To the south is Station Approach. On the east is Ermine Street, and then to the north and west, it's bounded by residential houses. So this shows the site in a little more detail. The current use of the site is a bus depot. So those buildings that you can see here are in association with the existing use. Access as existing is from Ermine Street as well as Station Approach. So the key issues with this application are the principle of development, impact on the character of the area, impact on residential amenity, highways and drainage. These are some photos from the site. These are taken from Station Approach. That's the existing access into the bus depot. These are from within the site. So this is looking to the rear of a former railway goods warehouse, which is a non-designated heritage asset. And then the second photo is looking to the north boundary, and you can see the neighbouring dwellings in the background there. The first photo on this slide is the existing access off Ermine Street, and you can see the pub in the background. And then the second photo shows the pub from Station Approach. So this is the proposed layout for the scheme. It's 30 dwellings in total. This includes a mix of one bedroom apartments, up to 3 bedroom detached dwellings. So quite a mix. The apartments would be within these two buildings here. This would be the non-designated heritage asset, which is to be retained and converted into apartments. And then the existing extension would be demolished and replaced, which would also be apartments. Here would be a row of terrace dwellings that would front onto Station Approach. The existing access from Station Approach would be blocked up, but there would be a pedestrian link here. Main access would be off Ermine Street. It would be moved to the south from the existing, just slightly to make room for those plots 1 and 2. And then the remaining dwellings would be situated along the north here. There would be a communal garden for the apartments, so occupiers of the apartments. Parking would be allocated within these courtyards for all the dwellings to the south part of the site. And then the dwellings to the north all have their separate parking areas. All the 3 bedroom dwellings have 2 spaces, and the remaining have at least 1 space. There are different levels within the site. This section drawing just indicates the existing relationship with the levels. So this building that you can see here in grey is one of the properties to the north. That's the existing boundary. There would be a retaining wall built here, and then that would be one of the gardens for the plots that lie to the north of the site. Here is the access road, planting within the car parking area, and then this is the side of one of the properties that would front onto Station Approach. So the retaining wall, there's a gap here. This was raised on the site visit. This gap would just be part of the plots to the north, so it would be maintained by whoever occupied that dwelling. And you can see here as well, Station Approach is on a slightly higher level than these dwellings. This is the building that's proposed to be converted. You can see the photograph here and then the proposed elevation. So the majority of openings that are existing are being utilised and would be the windows for the apartments. Any alterations that are proposed are in keeping with the existing building, and they do enhance the character. This is the part that would be demolished. You can see it's got corrugated metal elevations as existing. So this elevation here is what would be built in its place, and it's considered that this is a positive element of the scheme, that retention and enhancement of its character. These are the elevations for plots 1 to 4, just to give an example of the types of dwellings that would be built. You can see the character is reflected, reflects the character of the existing buildings, such as the railway warehouse that we've just seen in the photograph, use of the similar materials and the high-pitched gables. So to summarise, the principle is acceptable when assessed against SP3 as infill development, as a redevelopment opportunity within the settlement. The loss of employment site is acceptable given that it's a relatively small site, so it wouldn't have a detrimental impact on the overall supply of employment land within the district. In addition, the new use would be more in keeping with the surrounding area that is predominantly residential. The design, as we spoke about, responds to the character of the surrounding area. So that's in accordance with DE1 and EN6. The separation distances are considered adequate so that there wouldn't be any adverse impact on amenity for neighbouring occupants or the future occupants of the dwellings. Garden sizes are sufficient for the dwelling sizes proposed. Highways are happy with the layout that is proposed as well, and the new access. And the drainage scheme is going to be secured by condition. This has gone through discussions with Highways and the applicant. So the recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions that are set out in the report, as well as the Section 106 agreement to secure contributions for education, NHS, play equipment within Ancaster, as well as 9 affordable housing units that would be within the site. Just to raise a point that was discussed on the site visit, there is a crossing that's shown on the site plan. If I just go back to the site plan. So there are tactile crossing points that are noted on the plan here. In the Highways comments, they have asked for a crossing on Ermine Street, and in the condition that's listed in the report, it refers to what's shown on the plan. I have gone back to Highways and they have confirmed that they do want tactile crossing points across Ermine Street as well. So that condition is proposed to be reworded just to make that clear, and we will require details to be submitted to us and approved before any of the houses are occupied. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie, for that. And we've had Councillor Kathy Rice-Oxley join us. If you have any disclosures of interest, please make us aware. And could we have Councillor Ian Stokes come as speaker, please? Thank you. Yes, please.
Not used this one before. I have a few comments concerning this application, which was not within the South Kesteven local plan, but as it's a brownfield site with its associated loss of a couple of jobs, I think, in Ancaster, then I don't see that there is any problem. But the first point is, I fail to see how a railway goods warehouse building built in the Victorian era can be considered a non-designated heritage asset if left. It would be out of character with the new build. If one building can be demolished, then I don't see why this warehouse building shouldn't be, and a proper building put up there in keeping with the rest of the estate. I would hope that the suggestion concerning plots 1 to 29 in 4.2.4 can be incorporated into the conditions of granting this application. In connection with 7.5.5, has the developer planner viewed the actual services stopping at Ancaster Station? I think it's actually 2 in each direction daily, hardly it's hardly near an hourly service as provided from Grantham or Sleaford to Skegness. So people will still need to travel to catch the trains at the main stations. There will be contaminated land. So can the committee, as in the past, expect the developer to come back to request the withdrawal of the Section 106 agreement? Locally, there is provision for grasses in the area within the site. Who is expected to maintain the cutting, etc. in the future? The parish council funding provision has not been made for this. And in connection with the Section 106 agreement, I don't know, I suppose this is the county council, but why has the 50,974 been allocated to provide additional capacity at Sleaford secondary schools when it is well known that many village pupils travel into Grantham or even travel to William Robertson School? And what about the village junior school? I suppose that is for the other development later on. And the 16,768 being allocated towards play equipment, the parish council were a bit concerned about that because they requested funding to improve the station approach in conjunction with Network Rail, and that seems to have been overlooked or even ignored. But I'm not against this development. There's just these points that I consider the committee should give consultation with. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Do I have any questions for Councillor Stokes? No, thank you. Thank you very much. Could I ask for our next speaker, please? Gareth Johnson, if you'd like to come up. Thank you. And start when you're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you to the chair and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak on behalf of our client and in support of the application today. Firstly, I would like to read a short statement from Glenn Pratt, the applicant and chairman of AC Williams Coaches. AC Williams Coaches has a long and proud association with Ancaster, but in order to facilitate the ongoing growth and development of the business, it has felt necessary to move to another site that is better suited as a transport depot. The company has identified a site for relocation on an industrial apartment nearer to Grantham and still within SKDC. Glenn would like to give his personal reassurance that all the employment within the company will be retained, and moving to a new site would allow the company to keep reinvestment in the business and create further employment opportunities. A pre-application advice request was submitted to SKDC in autumn 2020, and in receipt of the positive written feedback, a full application was submitted in May 2021. The design team have since worked proactively with SKDC and all consultees to get the application to its current position to be recommended for approval. The application is seeking for approval for 30 residential units, including the retention and conversion of the non-designated heritage asset, the former railway goods warehouse. The site is located within a residential area of Ancaster and is bound by residential properties to the north and west. Therefore, it is felt that the relocation of the coach depot to be replaced with an appropriately designed residential development would be a positive outcome for the nearby residents and village of Ancaster. The existing vehicle access point is proposed to be moved further south towards a railway and public house. This enables an increased buffer between the public house beer garden and proposed residential plots 1 and 2 to the north of the site. The proposed shared surface has been designed in accordance with LCC Highways recommendation and manual for streets, and a total of 51 vehicle parking spaces have been provided across the site, which surpasses the criteria outlined at the pre-app stage. The proposal includes a variety of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom accommodation across detached, semi-detached and terrace housing, in addition to a variety of apartments. There are 9 units allocated for affordable housing and have been split as per the Affordable Housing Officer's request, 2 for first homes, 3 for shared ownership and 4 for affordable rent. 3 units have also been identified to comply with M42 of the building regulations.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Our client has instructed some substantial consultant reports in support of this application, that include a planning statement, site investigation, heritage impact assessment, transport statement, noise assessment, flood risk and drainage strategies. The design, layout and appearance of the proposals have evolved and been refined throughout the duration of this application, with very valuable and significant input from the planning officer and design officer, which we have followed extremely closely. The appearance of the residential units have been designed to both reflect the vernacular of Ancaster as well as the traditional railway architecture. Some notable design features include steep roof pitches, single-story projections, and high-quality external materials. Our client is content with the outlined Section 106 contributions, as well as the 2 tactile crossing points requested. We hope that the committee will follow the planning officer's recommendation and approve this application, and I am more than happy to answer any questions if permitted to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Grisnowsing, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, through you. Thank you very much for your presentations. I would very much like to know if you'd like to tell us what is the provisions you made with regard to the climate change, i.e. EV provisions for electric vehicles parking and also for the noise reductions from the rail. And would you be amenable to improving the approach to the train stations there?
So the noise to the train station has been accounted for, and the assessment deals with that. That's something that happens at a technical design stage. Obviously, we're only at planning stage now. So in response to the climate change and EV parking, that will happen on the site, and we will meet the criteria set out that we need to in terms of providing electrical vehicle charging points. Yes.
Well, I cannot say anywhere where it is mentioned here with regard to EV, but I just, as you've got a group of two groups of car parks here, and I just wonder any facilities could be made available on those particular sites. And also, have you considered in terms of actually the houses itself of removing gas boilers or having alternative forms of heating?
So on the site plan, on the application, there is allocation for EV charging points. It's not very easy to see on there, but they have been shown and identified where those are going to be. In terms of the thermal performance of the building, will have to exceed the building regulations, otherwise they won't comply. So it's not something that's been detailed yet, but it certainly can be included.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Selby.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. Very good afternoon to you, Mr. Johnson. I have a little concern in relation to the property that's at the main entrance there. Can you tell me, please, have you ever seen a small electric power station that size go up in flames? And if so, would you still have put that property right next door, as close as that to that particular power station? Or can somebody alleviate my concerns and tell me that that power station is safe? Thank you.
Yes, I think we have consulted with Western Power, and we are more than the requested distance away from that power station. So they have been consulted and they are happy with the location of that dwelling. So, thank you.
Sorry, any other questions? Councillor Stevens?
Yes, sorry, you might have covered this. I see, I'm looking at the glass. You're obviously going to put some nice thick panes of glass. Is that just against the noise of the trains, or is that also as a heating, in regard to heating? And what other contingencies are there going to be, towards insulating the properties to make them less reliant on fuel, really?
Yeah, so our transport consultant from BSP, noise assessment from BSP has dealt with that in their report. It's a fairly comprehensive report, which includes many suggestions on the type of glazing, the insulation, and buffer zones to reduce that noise. I would also say across the whole site, we're happy to accept the detailed hard and soft landscaping scheme which I think could be a real benefit in terms of increasing biodiversity. And I think there was a comment as to who would maintain the communal areas. A maintenance company or management company would be doing that, so it wouldn't be the responsibility of Ancaster Parish Council either. So yeah, I appreciate that the questions are sort of very technically minded and rightly so in terms of climate change and insulation and how we can improve our properties. I would just like to suggest that we're only at the planning stage yet, and that will get taken forward when these buildings get designed technically.
If it's mentioning the looking after of the communal gardens, that was another question. The other thing was the station approach. The parish council were concerned about the look of that, weren't they? They wanted to see some landscaping and seating on the approach to the station. Is that where I wouldn't know who to ask about that? Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, station approach is not an adopted highway, and therefore we can't sort of have any impact on that. And I believe that's why the planning department have suggested that they will not be looking or seeking any contribution for that.
Thank you. Councillor Cathy Rice-Oxley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, just you mentioned 50 odd cars, I think 51 cars. So a lot of cars on quite a small road. Is there any thought to provide a pedestrian footpath or pavement? Or thank you.
Yes, from the beginning, we had two options from sort of LCC highways in recommendation, whether we go for the traditional road with footpath or shared surface. And it was in their opinion that the shared surface was a better approach. It's slightly wider than a normal road, but as the name suggests, it allows pedestrians and vehicles to share the same road, which ultimately I think they believe has the effect of traffic calming to slow people down because of that by its nature.
Thank you. Councillor Trotter.
Yeah, Kathy's just stole my thunder as such, but because I was on the site visit. But we did discuss it, and while I was concerned there was no footpaths, particularly because I think there'll be young families buying property. But then I thought it is natural, it happens where I live, that people park on the halfway on the path anyway, so you're probably not going to gain this just because you got a footpath. It doesn't necessarily make it safety. So yeah, I probably tend to agree with you from what you've said, but obviously, safety is always a concern. And obviously we also noted that there's no footpath going under the railway bridge on the right hand side. So I just wanted to highlight that. So you literally have to cross Ermine Street to get onto the footpath. So that was a concern of ours. And I note that there is a crossing which we didn't particularly know about. So yeah, I note your comments and thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bellamy.
Yeah, I just wondered whether you'd consider putting block paving instead of tarmac on the shared area where there's vehicles and pedestrians using the same area, just because it just seems sort of more, it's more associated with driveways and sort of traffic calming, if you like.
Yes, absolutely. I think all the external materials have been conditioned, but I think that is a very wise suggestion, and it's something that we see all over. It becomes recognisable as a shared surface and home zones with those materials. So yes, I'd agree.
Thank you. Do I have any more questions from the applicant's agent? No. Lovely. Thank you very much for your time. Right. Questions to the officers then, please. Do I have any? Councillor Stevens, thank you.
Yes, can I ask that question about the station approach? Because it's sort of, yeah. Okay.
Yes, so the parish did comment and say they wanted some Section 106 contributions to tidy up the area, seating, potentially a footpath. But it would have to meet, contributions that we ask for have to meet certain tests. And one of them is that it's necessary to make the development acceptable. And with the scale of this development, and that it's not actually going to have any vehicular access onto that station approach, those dwellings that front onto station approach will actually enhance the street scene there. It's not considered that it would be necessary. It is acceptable without those improvements to station approach. That's why it's not been requested.
So the parish council's concern about the station approach on the railway side, is that null and void then? Or are we still going to see a scruffy area opposite where you're building because it's not owned by anybody or not claimed by anybody or not enforceable? What are we going to, because that's not satisfactory, is it?
It is considered satisfactory to us. It is how it is as existing. It's not going to have an unacceptable impact on the occupiers of the new dwellings, and the development itself isn't going to have a negative impact on the current situation. So that's why it's not considered necessary.
Who owns it?
I believe it's Network Rail that own Station Approach.
Have there been any discussions with Network Rail about that area then?
They've provided comments that are within the report. No objections from them. They've included a lot of informatives that are standard. They have included things about landscaping, but it is just a standard informative where it would be directly adjacent, and that doesn't apply in this instance. It's not directly adjacent to the railway, is what I'm saying.
You see, if I was a parish councillor and I was looking at this and the application, and I could see a scruffy area that wasn't, that wasn't touched by this, I would like to see that cleaned up somehow. So I would like to see some sort of, could you have something?
Sorry, perhaps I can help. I know the area of land that you're talking about. It's in private ownership as far as we're concerned. It's not adopted highway. It would be for the owners of that land to tidy that site up. There are mechanisms in planning control to deal with untidy site, but I don't think it meets the tests there. However, what's in front of us today is a planning application to consider whether or not 30 dwellings on the application site are acceptable. We can do an awful lot through planning obligations in terms of securing Section 106 money, contributions, provision of other things, either contribution or physical facilities. However, there's some very clear tests that must be met. And one of those tests is that whatever it is that we're securing must be, the planning obligation must seek to make an unacceptable application acceptable. The scale of any contribution or any provision in physical provision on site, it has to be reasonably necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. It needs to be directly related to the application, and it needs to be fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind. The fact that an adjoining piece of land is perhaps a bit scruffier than we would have otherwise have liked isn't, in my opinion, directly related to whether or not this scheme is acceptable. So whilst it's always useful to ask the question and always useful of parish councils to highlight these facts, in this particular instance, it would not be reasonable for us to try and secure funding towards improvements on third-party land that we certainly can't be certain could be delivered in any case. So I think it might be something that the parish council perhaps wants to pursue directly, and maybe the relevant, the local ward councillors may wish to try and contact Network Rail to see if they can get a tidying up of the site outside of the process, but I'm afraid it's not appropriate to the planning application.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor
Yeah,
Stevens?
I would like to, because so there's this sort of, I quite understand the planning obligations and the restrictions that there are regarding the planning application. But what I would say is this is another case of unjoined up thinking, isn't it? Because there's Joe Public, a member of Joe Public doesn't understand about planning and the legal obligations and so on, comes along and sees this area being developed and sees a scruffy piece of land adjacent to it that isn't tidied up, and they wonder why that is. And and then if you extrapolate this and put it out over the whole country, that's why we end up with the abominations that we have. So I think it behoves, yes, the parish council and the ward councillors and Network Rail to actually get their act together and sort that out. So, you know, as a message from this committee, I hope that that can be heard. I do understand that legally we have no obligation to that, but if somebody could let Network Rail know that I think there's some sort of consensus from the committee that that should be done, then that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have to point out that I parked up near there, and there is a community garden which doesn't look very well kept either. So perhaps that is the local community want to get involved, and tidying up that area might be beneficial for all.
Sorry, whose is the community garden then? Who did?
No, there was a little garden there and it said community garden. So, and that's not very well looked after. Councillor Bisnessing, did you have your hand up?
Madam Chairman, just thank you very much. Just to add to Councillor Judy Stevens, what your comment, I think it is, you know, I know what we are doing. We're going around the red lines around the sites, you know, so we're not going outside this red line. But I think when you look at it in terms of joint of thinking, here we are providing 30 houses for the community, and those members of the community, we should encourage them to use that train service that is there instead of using their car to keep our carbon footprint. So I think it would be in the interest, probably the gentleman quite rightly say, yes, they would like to beautify the site outside it to make it more attractive. And I think probably it's not beyond work rocket science. Probably we can talk to the developer and Network Rails to make the site better. And I would very much like that if the initiative is taken up by themselves, as opposed to asking for a 106 community grants in that case. Sorry, I don't know. If,
did you want a question to Ellie?
My question to Emma was coming back to it. I wonder if there will be a proper safety with regard to the transformer that is by the bungalow there, or the building number 1 over there. Is there some kind of safety shielding that can be put around there? Because I'm really concerned, like Councillor Selby raised it, because I've seen those things go up in flames and they are very intense heat, and that bungalow is quite close to it. Ideally, I would have liked to see the bungalow further, probably on this side, keep the entrance as it is, because where the entrance is, the other thing I did point it out to our planning officer, Ellie, that where it is at the moment situated, there is a drain on the road that will be right in the middle of it. And that has to be moved. So I just wonder if you can clarify, are there any sort of safety features that are going to be implemented there?
Thank you, Councillor. In relation to the substation, I had a look on what the regulations are from Western Power. It needs to be 1 metre away as a minimum from an occupied building. And that distance, the minimum distance there is 1.8 metres. So it does meet their regulations. All I can say is that I would imagine that substation has been built in accordance with how it should be in terms of safety. There's no additional safety barriers or anything proposed. You saw on site, it does have that metal fencing around it. But in terms of extra fire safety, there isn't anything proposed. There would be an additional boundary along that, along the site boundary, in addition to that metal fencing. And that would, the details of that would come in at condition stage. So onto the drain, the point you made about the drain, that is within the adopted road. So it would be, that's covered by other statutory bodies. So highways and Anglian Water, whichever was in charge of that particular drain, it would all be dealt with when the new access is done, and through all the legal agreements with highways and Anglian Water about utilities. So that would be sorted at that stage rather than planning.
Yes, certainly.
My second question, I raised it at the site visit, but actually I'm very pleased that you have said that there will be a tactile crossing there. But I wonder, crossing a main road, more like, if it is possible to make it more visible, like having a zebra crossing as opposed to a tactile crossing, because many motorists totally ignore the tactile crossing. People, if they're standing there to cross, they will not stop for them to go, to that. I wonder if we can possibly persuade highways in a way to have a zebra crossing there as opposed to the tactile crossing.
It has been included on the recommendation of highways, and if they felt that a zebra crossing was needed, that's what they would have required. But because they have required that it's the tactile crossing points, I don't feel we can really go back and say it needs to be a zebra crossing.
Thank you, Emma. If you want to come in.
Can I just add to that as well? Sorry, Ellie. If you look under the County Council's comments in the report on page 40, they actually point out the development doesn't technically meet the criteria for a crossing, but they've managed to reach a compromise. So actually there's a betterment already that the county has negotiated with the applicant. So I think it would be unreasonable to try and push that further to get a zebra crossing. Plus, we have to rely on the expert advice of the Highways Authority around what's safe, what works best in that particular location. And if there are issues with speeding, then they have other methods that they can deal with that particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cathy Rice-Oxley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question about lighting. So am I assuming this correctly? So the road is to be adopted by LCC, and presumably there'll be a management company for all the communal areas, the gardens and car parks. So will there be adequate street lighting, and that will presumably be run by the council, and then there will be lighting for the car parks, and that will be run by the management company? Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct. So we haven't got details of any lighting at the moment, but that would come under the hard landscaping conditions. The details would come in at that point. So any that were within the adopted area would be maintained by highways, and then any that were within the car park area, for example, would be the maintenance company, if that's who runs it.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions for the officer? Questions and debate, don't we? So what I would like to say is I quite like the design of the buildings. They take into account the character of the original railway building. They look like little railway cottages, and it's nice to see some detail in some building designs for a change instead of everything being off the shelf. Thank you, Councillor Ian Selby.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I've actually seen one of those small power stations go up in flames, Madam Chairman, in Grantham, and it's quite some sight, I'll tell you. So to be that close, personally, it would put me off purchasing that particular property that's right next to it. That's my personal opinion. Regarding the entrance, Madam Chairman, when I looked at this, I didn't like the two properties that are on so close to the driveway to it, but I can understand that the developer is maximising profit by putting those two where they are. Yeah, that was just something I didn't personally like. Generally speaking, yeah, I do like the application. Also, I share Councillor Stevens' concerns about the railway area. As I was say on the site visit, parked behind yourself, Madam Chair, when I was leaving, I'm sure you found the same, that coming out of that junction right next to the railway bridge, very, very precarious, and it just needs a mirror across the road. So I thought that's. I get the point that it's probably just a little bit away from the development, so it's not connected, so therefore we don't have a legal obligation. I get that point that you've raised there. So really that's down to the parish council or Network Rail to resolve that problem. But yeah, it does need a mirror there, it's definitely. But generally speaking, Madam Chairman, yeah, I'd just like to wish AC Williams all the best when they relocate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any more questions for the officer or anybody wishing to speak and debate? No? Well, then I would like to propose this. I like the design. We've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. I think with things that we've brought up when we was on the site visit and Ellie's confirmed for us our concerns. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sarah Trotter.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'd like to second Madam Chairman. Yeah, I think it's a good site, and it's really refreshing that they're going to use the old railway building. It looks a bit sad at the moment, so it's going to breathe new life. And I think due to the lack of objections as well, I think generally it's well supported in the area. So I'm more than happy to second it.
Thank you. Councillor Judy Stevens.
I am sorry, contrary to Councillor Stokes, I think it's really good that some of the vernacular architecture is being preserved. And I just hope other developers notice that this is being done, because it's all good. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. And then that's it then. It's unanimous. Congratulations. Congratulations, and I wish you all the success with your move. Thank you. Right.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
please accept my apologies for being late.
Yes.
I do apologise.
That's all right. And we were aware that you couldn't vote or speak on the item, which you
That's right,
didn't.
thank you.
So thank you very much. And if you have any disclosures of interest, please make us aware throughout. Lovely, thank you. We'll go to item 6 on the agenda and Adam Murray to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Apologies for the slight delay there. This is application S212328, and it is a full detailed plan application for the construction of 4 flats at Elizabeth Road in Stamford. And the application is being referred to Planning Committee because South Kesteven District Council is the applicant and owner of the site. So the site itself here is a site area of 586 square metres, and it's situated to the southwest of Elizabeth Road, which is to the north of Stamford Town Centre. So just got a aerial shot here, and then just zooming in, this is the site located here in this southwest corner of Elizabeth Road that you can see bending around here. The site currently is bound to the north by 82 Elizabeth Road, to the south by 80 Elizabeth Road. You can see Elizabeth Road stretching along the frontage here, and then Stamford Cemetery to the west here. Currently comprises an area of hard standing and a grassed frontage. It was previously occupied by a set of garages, but they are understood to have been vacated in 2011. Development in the area at the moment is generally sort of post-war local authority housing. It's a mixture of terraced and semi-detached 2-storey properties, generally similar design to what you can see on the screen here, which is buff brick with concrete roof tiles, slightly set back from the footway, where you've got properties there where the shallow front gardens have then been laid with hard standing and are being used for areas of parking, as you can see sort of evidenced on the screen here. Just for reference, you can just see the edge of the site here on the right hand side of the screen, and this is 80 Elizabeth Road here in the corner. No actual designations for the site itself, but Stamford Cemetery, which is to the west of the site, is a local wildlife site. And it's important also to mention that the site has previously had planning permission for residential development for a terrace of 3 houses, which was granted in 2001, but was not implemented and subsequently lapsed. In terms of the current proposals in front of us today, as I say, it's a full detailed plan application for the construction of 4 flats. Each of the flats is to be a 1-bed, 2-person flat measuring about 52 square metres, and is proposed to be affordable rented accommodation. The scheme itself proposes a single block of flats located in the western part of the site on the existing area of hard standing, and access to the site would be taken via the existing access location in the northwest corner of the site. The existing tree that you can see on the site frontage here, that is to be removed and replaced as part of the development. And the layout does retain a right of access through the site to the existing garage for 80 Elizabeth Road, which you can see just off the plan here. In terms of elevations, the scheme is proposed to be a 2-storey apartment block with a ridge height of about 8.2 metres. Each of the units themselves would be single level and have their own independent access. And similar to the materials of the existing properties, it would be a buff brick properties with dark concrete roofs. The front elevation of the proposed block does feature a protecting gable element here, which provide balconies for the first floor apartments. And at the northern and southern ends of the elevation, there's projecting brickwork detail. And just to add a bit of visual interest to the design, and members will note that windows are proposed in the front and rear elevation of the scheme only. So just an indication of the floor plans here, as you can see, just demonstrating how those properties would have their own independent accesses and all accommodation would be on that single level. And then the applicant has provided street scenes here just to provide an indication of how the scheme would sit within that existing context. So in terms of key issues for this scheme, it's principal development, the design quality and visual impact of the scheme, impact on residential amenity, impact on biodiversity and ecology, and highways infrastructure, access and parking. In terms of officers' assessment of the scheme, first thing obviously just to make members aware, I'm sure you obviously will be, is with in fact that the district council is both the applicant and the local planning authority. It's a key for members just to consider that they are considering the application today as the local planning authority only. In terms of, as I say, as officers' assessment of the scheme, the view is that the principal development is acceptable. Effectively, it's redevelopment of a brownfield site, an infill scheme within Stamford. That would provide a windfall residential development meeting local affordable housing needs. The design is considered to be appropriate given the context of properties in the area at the moment and would not give rise to any unacceptable impacts on amenity in terms of the design guidelines, SPD. No adverse impacts on highways, drainage, infrastructure or open space, and subject to conditions, no adverse impacts on biodiversity and ecology. Just one thing for members to be aware of that's being picked up in the additional items paper is the receipt of an arboricultural impact assessment, which has been subsequently reviewed by the council's tree consultee. That's confirmed no objections subject to an updated series of conditions. And so the officer's assessment remains the same as in the main report, that the application should be recommended for approval subject to those amended conditions in the additional items. Happy to take any questions, Madam Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. We have no other speakers, so questions. Thank you. Councillor Ian Selby.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much for the presentation. Can you just say again, please, with regarding that little garage for property number 80? I mean, where do they currently gain access to that for that garage? And will they still have that? Can you just say again? Because I didn't quite catch what you said with regarding the access to that. If you just clarify that first, please. Thank you.
So if I just take you back to one of the previous images, Councillor, it's probably the best way to showcase it to you. So you've got, this is effectively the site in its current format, and this is the existing access. And at the moment, this is the garage in the corner here. So as you can see, at present, a vehicle would travel in through the access along the area of hard standing and would then reach the garage via that route. And effectively, that would still be the option then for them with the way the development would be laid out. They would come in via that access. The internal access route would then be here and allow them to gain access to their garage via the site there.
Thank you. And they would still have a legal right to that access. There would be no issues there with them being able to use that garage, regardless of whoever owns it.
As far as I'm aware, yes, Councillor.
Councillor Bisnassing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. have we, I don't know, because I haven't seen it in the write-up, with regards to any like solar panels? What sort of heating system are we putting there? And also, are there any points for EVs?
Yep, so there is an additional condition in there, councillor. Let me just find which one it is for you. It's condition 5 in the report on page 92, which essentially that covers off sustainable building measures, requires the applicant to provide details of that to us as part of that condition. So that would cover off things such as electric vehicle charging, solar panels, etc. Those sort of elements there.
I personally quite like the design, quite like the layout of this, and I think it's much better use of the space that is provided there, and also the much needed housings, especially council housings we need in Stamford. I welcome this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor David Bellamy.
Yeah, about the access to the garage, is there anything we can do just to make sure that that stays clear? Because bearing in mind there's only one parking space per unit, you know, could it be included in the tenancy agreements or anything like that, just to make sure that, like I say, that we don't get cars parked across the end of that access?
That's a matter for the council rather than the planning authority. But we can certainly feed those comments back to the housing team for you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Councillor Trotter.
Yeah, I'm not overly familiar with the location. As Councillor Bellamy said, one car, one person per flat. Is the street that, because you say the street parking, is there sufficient room? And obviously there's a cemetery across the road. I was just wondering, you know, obviously if there's burials, etc., and what, you know, what is a fairly good access?
Yeah, so in terms of the actual cemetery itself, as far as I'm aware, I don't believe people using the cemetery are likely to park on this street itself. I believe there's separate arrangements for that. In terms of sort of parking on this street for residents, as I say, quite a few of the properties at the moment have turned their front gardens into areas of hard standing and use that as parking. There's also existing garage courts elsewhere on the street that does provide parking as well. And then where residents do park on street, there's considered to be sufficient sort of capacity on there to accommodate sort of any displacement of existing parking or to accommodate sort of any visitor parking for this scheme. Yeah, so our view is there is sufficient capacity on the street network to accommodate that.
Thank you for that. I have no other reservations. That was my only concern.
Thank you. Councillor Penny Robbins, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say I would be in support of this application. I think it's been designed well, and Stamford is a really sort of affordable rented accommodation, and I'm quite happy for this to second this. Yes, to propose it. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Do I have any other questions for the officer? Anybody wish to speak in debate? Councillor Bisnesi.
Madam Chairman, as I said, I welcome the provision of additional 4 dwellings in there, which is much needed for Stamford. We need more of those because some of the wherever we have got garages in Stamford, they tend to be vandalized and not used properly. So I think by putting not in this particular location, but other places where we have put council houses, it's been well used. I'm very happy to propose I'll second that, Madam Chairman.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Bisnesi, and I have to agree with both of you. Good design and much welcomed accommodation. If we don't have any other speakers, questions, shall we go to the debate, vote, sorry. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. That's gone through. Thank you. So we will now go to agenda item 7, and that's Ellie doing that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this last application is reference S21 2193. So 19 park homes with associated access, car parking, amenity space and landscaping at land at South Fen Road in Bourne. My name is Ellie Siller. I'm one of the senior planning officers. So this is the location of the site indicated in red. You can see it's to the east of Bourne and to the south of South Fen Road. And then to the east, you've got countryside and surrounding various industrial uses. This shows the site in more detail. Immediately to the south is a recycling centre. And then on the left-hand side, there's a few different uses, including a garden centre, MOT centre, and a factory, I believe is the left-hand building. On the right-hand side, you've got a just open countryside, and then there are 2 dwellings as well to the east. The key issues are the principle of development, as it is an edge of settlement location, residential amenity and character, highways and drainage and ecology. These are some site photos that were taken last week. The first photo is the access from South Fen Road, and then the second photo is stood on that access road looking at the section that goes into the site, and you can see the recycling centre in the background. These, the first photo there is a track that runs to the east of the site, and then the second photo looks across the site to the south boundary, and again the recycling centre you can see. This is the surrounding area, you can see the industrial uses, and then on the second photo that you can see the dwellings that are just in the distance. This is the proposed site layout, so it's 19 park homes. You can see the existing access will be utilised. That's the same access for the recycling centre to the south, and that road would just be constructed to continue into the site and have those three sections where the park homes would be situated around. Each would have a small amount of amenity space and parking. So in terms of the principle then, there was an appeal decision in 2020 on a site that's approximately 140 metres east of the application site. This was an outline application for 4 dwellings. It was refused by the council and then subsequently dismissed on appeal. Part of the decision says that in any event, the appeal site does not lie within the main built-up part of the settlement. So this confirms the edge of settlement location of the site. In talking about the wider area, it says the area provides a transition between the settlement of Bourne into the open countryside. So with that in mind, it is considered edge of settlement development. So policy SP4 applies. As you're all aware, with SP4, it does require that community support is demonstrated at the point of submission. This hasn't been supplied with the application. On top of this, we've had objections from Bourne Town Council as well as the Civic Society. So it doesn't meet SP4A. And then we also haven't had any evidence of a specific need for park homes that has been demonstrated, which is another criteria that is required of SP4. Onto residential amenity, it's not considered that the site is appropriate for residential use given the surrounding uses that are predominantly industrial. This is due to the noise levels that would occur as well as potential odours. So that is for that reason that it's not considered acceptable. In addition to that, introducing that more sensitive use to the area could potentially be detrimental to those uses that are already there because they could end up having complaints to environmental protection, for example. So onto highways and drainage, there were initial concerns raised from highways, but these have been, there's a revised plan that's been submitted and they're happy with the layout. In terms of ecology, there was a survey that was submitted. It does recommend that additional surveys are carried out. Now, one of the reasons for refusal is to do with ecology due to insufficient information, but these could be, if it was refused and then it was appealed, the applicant would have the opportunity to carry out those surveys. The reason they weren't requested is because they're limited to certain times of the year, so it would unnecessarily prolong the application. So given the principal issue, it wasn't felt that was an appropriate thing to do. So as discussed, the recommendation is to refuse the application for the reasons that are set out within the committee report. It's contrary to SP3, SP4, DE1, EN2 and section 12 of the NPPF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll have the other speaker first before we go to questions to officers, if that's okay. So could I ask Connor Shingler to come and speak, please, and start when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman and members, for the opportunity to speak to you today. A letter was circulated to members in advance of this meeting, which summarised the proposals and responded directly to the cited reasons for refusal, which I will discuss now. The officer states the proposal is contrary to policy SP4 of the local plan and is unacceptable on 3 grounds relating to principle, amenity and ecology. Regarding the principle, Part A of policy SP4 requires clear evidence of community support for a development on the edge of a settlement. Pre-application advice received from the council expressed that we should contact Bourne Town Council to discuss the proposals in advance of submission. However, despite contacting them, no response was ever received to a request for a meeting. Additionally, no objections to the application have been received from local residents or neighbouring land uses. Surrounding built form includes a waste recycling centre to the south and a residential dwelling to the east. Given the form of the surrounding uses and without a response from the Town Council or objections and concerns from neighbouring properties, it was difficult to establish what lines of suitable engagement could have been achieved for this particular development. In our view, just because there has not been substantial support for the development, this does not mean the proposals are not supported by the community. In response to Part E, which requires proposals to prove a proven local need, a letter was circulated to members prior to this meeting outlining a need within Bourne and the benefits of providing this type of accommodation. Park homes provide an affordable alternative when people are ready to downsize. The price of bungalows has risen by over 30%, and now the average price of bungalows within the Bourne area are almost double the price of what a residential park home would be on this site. As part of the evidence provided, an online campaign was set up, and despite a relatively short time frame, 6 people responded stating their interest in this type of accommodation. Bourne does not offer a residential park home development of the nature or affordability proposed, the nearest sites being in Grantham, Sleaford and Peterborough. Regarding the standard of amenity for future occupiers, concerns have been raised regarding noise and odour. The planning application was supported by an odour assessment and a noise assessment, and the council's environmental protection team were consulted. They responded advising that they accepted the results and the conclusions reached within the reports, and that the proposed development site would be an acceptable use as land for residential purposes. Regarding ecology, at no point were we approached by the case officer to submit additional survey work, and we have the view that the applicant has not been given sufficient opportunity to respond to any concerns raised. This matter could reasonably have been dealt with during the application process, or a suitably worded condition requiring the additional information could have been appended to any planning consent. To conclude, the land itself does not have any protective designations or technical constraints that would preclude development. It is also located in a sustainable location with access to nearby services and facilities in Bourne. There is a need for this type of accommodation, and the benefits associated with developing the site for housing in the scale and form proposed, and in the absence of any substantial harm, weighs heavily in favour of the development. We hope the council will look at this application favourably and resolve to grant planning permission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Stevens?
Yeah, I was just wondering, didn't you consider the 3 park home sites in the Deepings as being close to Bourne?
Not within Bourne, no. I mean, if you're on about the ones that's not licensed or registered.
They're all licensed and registered, and there are 3 of them in the Deepings.
I'm not aware of those.
Councillor Selby?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, thank you very much indeed for coming on today. Did you say that the Bourne Town Council didn't respond to your correspondence? Is that what you said?
Yes, so we sought pre-application advice from the council in the first instance, and they advised we approached Town Council. So following that, we did, and we emailed May 2021, and no response, follow-up calls, no response. So yeah, interesting, unfortunately.
Can I just I did speak to the town clerk of Bourne yesterday. He went back through his emails and could not see an email from yourselves So where that went, or if you've got the correct email address, I am not sure. But I am certain that he would have contacted and responded to you if he'd received an email. Thank you.
Just come back, Madam Chairman, on that. Yeah, I just find that a little bit strange. I mean, like, clearly states in here that the Bourne Town Council have commented on this particular application. So there's a communication failure somewhere. Whether COVID is going to get the blame for that or not, I don't know, Madam Chairman. But I do think, as a matter of courtesy, you should at least have received some sort of response.
The Town Council responded when it came up at a planning meeting at Bourne Town Council. Councillor Bellamy?
Yeah, yeah, I've just got one question. Did you consult with the planning officers about what would be considered appropriate consultation with the local community?
Yes, we did in the first instance, and they suggest we liaise with the town council to establish, the proposals and ways to move forward.
Did you contact the local industries around by letter or phone call at all, or was it just the Town Council?
Town council.
Do I have any other questions? No, lovely, thank you very much. We'll now go questions to officers. Do I have any? Councillor Bellamy?
Yeah, if this was given the go-ahead, bearing in mind it's a predominantly industrial area, could this possibly limit other applications because of the, you pointed out that the nature of this is a bit more sensitive than what industrial is, because obviously people are likely to complain about smells or anything like that. So could it possibly limit other applications in an industrial area in the future? For instance, if somebody wanted to put a food factory like Fenland Foods there that smelled, you could always smell the cooking and stuff like that. But it was going to supply probably quite a lot of employment, but it might be precluded purely because this site was there.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, you're correct. It could prejudice new applications that came forward that otherwise would have been acceptable if this residential development was to go ahead. But it could also prejudice the surrounding uses that are there now, because there are certain things that they might do that are lawful without having to apply, put another application in, that could intensify potentially the noise coming from those sites, and then it would end up in complaints to environmental protection. On that note, paragraph 187 of the NPPF specifically says planning decisions should ensure that new development integrates effectively with existing businesses. It goes on to say that they should not have unreasonable restrictions placed on them as a result of development permitted after they were established. So this development would go against paragraph 187 of the NPPF.
Councillor Kuznetsov?
Would you say that this land is more suitable for industrial type developments, being where it is for employment land, or can it be redesignated as a employment land only, as opposed to residential?
Given the surrounding uses, I would agree that it's more suitable for industrial use. It has had planning permissions in the past for light industrial that just haven't been implemented, and there haven't been any residential developments that have been approved in the past.
Madam Chairman, again, I would like to propose that we go along with the recommendations of the officer on these applications. I propose that.
Thank you. Councillor Bellamy? Okay, right, we have Councillor Rice-Oxley, thank you.
Thank you. Just have a question. Could you clarify, so in 5.4.4 about the assessment that was made about noise and odour? So it says that the results were accepted, but that in hot weather it might be different, worse. And in the previous, in 5.4.3, it also says that the impact survey took place during a lockdown. So in fact, it was probably not representative there was probably less noise and less odour than you'd expect in normal times. Can you just clarify what the sort of educated guess, I guess, would be about sort of normal times regarding the noise and the odour? Thank you.
So in terms of actual levels, I don't know what they would be in a normal circumstance, but just from the site visit that I went on last week, there was a lorry coming out of the recycling centre, which is the same access that would go alongside the development, and it was beeping, you know, when they had the reversing beeping, and you would have that constant sort of noise all the time. So it might not necessarily be the levels, but the amount of activity going on around the site. It wouldn't be a pleasant place to live. And as we've discussed, there could be other uses that would be introduced that wouldn't necessarily need an application, that would have louder impacts. So it's unknown what exactly the levels would be and the exact noise nuisances would be, but it's likely that there would be those.
Thank you, Ellie. I'll come back on that because I do use the recycling centre, and in the summer months when everybody is queuing to use the green recycling, the traffic does queue along that road. So residents would have to bear that in mind. They've got queuing traffic when it's open. Councillor Bellamy, have you remembered?
Thank you. It was Councillor Bisnashing, you put me off, so I weren't expecting it. Would you expect under any consultation under SP4 with the local area for the local businesses to be consulted as well, bearing in mind it could affect them later on?
Yes, it doesn't specify specifically that has to be carried out, but they do form part of the community in the surrounding area, so it would have been beneficial to have done that.
Thank you. Councillor Gloria Johnson.
Thank you. I'd like to second Harish's proposal because I think it's a no-starter. Anybody in the right mind would not want to live there with the recycling there and all the factories and be sort of fenced in. So I don't think it'd even get people to move there. So I think I will second Harish's proposal.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else that wishes to ask any questions, speak in any debate? We have a proposer and a seconder, so we'll go to the vote. All those in favour of refusal, going along with the officers, thank you. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you for all your time coming. Thank you, officers, for all your presentations, thorough presentations. And I close the meeting at 2:22.